Hello, and welcome back for another edition of the AI Insiders Podcast, the flagship podcast of crushing it. Full disclosure, I'm not sure what it is nor why crushing it is a good thing, but it seems like something people want to do. So why not help crush it with another AI Insider Podcast episode? Hi, I'm Adam Russell. I'm the director of the AI division at the University of Southern California's Information Sciences Institute, and I'm your host for the AI Insiders. This is the podcast where we get after AI by getting to the humans, or in other words, trying to get a better sense of what AI will be, where it's going, what that could mean, possibly for all of us, by talking to some of us, and in particular, my human colleagues at ISI who are working in the AI trenches, and therefore have some of the most important perspectives, I think, on what our AI-imbued future could look like, and what they're doing to help ensure that that future is more brilliant for more of us. So having worked a little bit with today's guest, Merle Marmarellis, he's a PhD candidate at USC and ISI, I can say that this guy is deep in the technical trenches. He's working on things that I doubt most people would, on the face of it, at least understand. But when we step back, as I hope we will a little bit today, I think this person's drive to get AI to help us better understand causality, the whys of the world, why certain things do or do not happen, man, that's going to be key to the brilliant future. So Merle, welcome to AI Insiders.
Thank you, Adam. It's great to be here talking with you.
I hope you continue to feel that way.
We'll see.
Yeah, exactly. Because we ask strange questions. And the first strange question I have for you is we want to go back in time, and I want to sort of sit and watch you talk to your 12, 13-year-old self and explain to young Merle what today's Merle is doing in AI and why.
So, all right, 12 or 13 is middle school era. Just getting into some light programming. I was trying to build websites, I remember, and things like that. That was my first introduction to, I guess, computer science, you could say. Because as a kid, I was more into, cars and airplanes and machines and factories. Of course, you don't really have access to that as a middle schooler. So I was instead working on software, trying to build things there. And it felt nice to build something, even if it wasn't physical. So at the time, I think the idea of being able to predict things, like building a system that takes in data and makes decisions or makes predictions, that has always been very exciting to me. So if I were to explain to my middle school self what I'm doing now, I guess I would say that I followed this path and also got much deeper into the math side of things, like statistics. At the time, I hated stats because it was all about t-tests and estimating the mean of something or whatnot. So I would say, like, I realized that is a beautiful thing, probability theory, and I got kind of obsessed with it. And now I'm here where we've combined the two, computer science and so coding and software engineering, and combined that with probability and statistics, and trying to understand the world in that way, building things that could make sophisticated predictions that are useful.
Was there a light bulb moment for you? I mean, that transition from like, okay, this is dry material stuff to like, oh man, this is a way of like interrogating nature.
I think one of the light bulb moments could be traced back to undergrad, where I was like PhDs run in my family, I guess you could say. And I was getting convinced that maybe I should like do some research and get a PhD because it's very good for the future too, if anything,
Oh, you don't want to be the kid, the one kid who doesn't have a PhD at Thanksgiving, right? Yeah,
yeah, exactly. The one like non-doctor Marmarellis.
So embarrassing.
Yeah. So yeah, right. So I was looking for professors at USC to maybe do some undergrad research with. And so I was searching at the USC library for papers from USC professors that did like weird methods that were machine learning-y, but not really machine learning. And I stumbled upon a paper by a professor, Roger Ganem at Viterbi. And the ideas there were really interesting to me because it had to do with taking data and building embeddings. And we could come up with these really interesting graphs that basically try to compress the data into these factors that tell us how the system behaves. I found that really exciting. So I reached out to Roger, and we just started working on different things. And basically, he opened my eyes to the world of these statistical methods that let you actually start understanding things. And I realized, okay, it's not just t-tests and confidence intervals and all that. There's so much more to stats.
Do you have a sort of a hero in this space who's able to do sort of, complex thinking along these lines? I sometimes guise this question as, given the uncertainty of the future, and you could have anybody from history, alive or dead, come and have dinner and ask them questions about like, how should we navigate this uncertainty in the face of complexity? Is there somebody that comes to mind whose expertise or wisdom you'd really love to leverage?
Okay, yeah. So, okay, I'm biased by recency, we could say. So I wouldn't call this person a hero necessarily, but I think it's a very interesting story. I was
Mm.
reading about Justinian, one of the emperors in the Byzantine Empire, who was very ambitious and implemented a lot of things and was willing to take risks. He's a very controversial emperor. What's really interesting to me is that so many things happened during his reign, and he still managed to like keep things going. There was a massive plague. There was a huge climate event that like destroyed a big chunk of the crops, and he still was able to just like stay agile and keep like writing new laws and just trying, a lot of the laws didn't work out, but he kept doing it, and it's just willing to try new things. And so I find that an interesting character. I don't know if like I'd want to model myself after, but
No,
yeah.
hero is not the right term, but I
Uh-huh.
think, someone who, you definitely want to have dinner with Justinian.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, what so far has been the most sort of counterintuitive result or finding you've had?
One thing, one thing I was surprised by, and it's the intersection of so causal inference. A lot of it came from econometrics, even political science, statistics, and whatnot. And the intersection of this with machine learning, you'd think that people would have explored, and they have, explored many different parts of this. But in some ways, it also feels like just the beginning. Like there's so much fertile ground for taking ideas from some of these fields and bringing it to machine learning. And I don't know, it's just something that I've been really excited about lately. The idea that we could take ideas from the very rigorous statistics of causal inference and just add a little bit of it to a large language model, let's say, to make it a bit more causal. And it feels like a small community that's working on this now, and it's exciting to kind of be a part of it.
Yeah. So along those lines, then you mentioned LLMs or large language models. Are there other things about sort of the incredible pace of AI that they've been able to do that have taken you by surprise?
Looking back, AI does go through these waves of really exciting results, and then AI winters for a little bit until the next result. One thing that is worth keeping in mind is that it's easy to generate very impressive examples, especially for things that exist frequently in the data. But there's a lot of low probability concepts. And I was just looking at a preprint about this recently that was really exciting to me. There's this idea like, the observational data and the text corpus of the internet, there's a lot of concepts that are kind of low probability, and probably most things are at the tails, right? There's a lot of stuff out there that you don't see very frequently in text. And
Just to unpack that a little bit for the listeners. So, but concepts that are low probability, meaning that there are these ideas or expressions or statements or words that hang together that aren't found very often.
yeah, like there's so many like niches in discourse. Like very few people talk about Justinian, let's say, or
Right. Yeah.
right. And
We just added to their
yeah, I
training
guess we
data.
did.
You're welcome. Yeah, but
And when it comes to these topics, you start to see the effects of hallucination way more strongly. It's I think a good cautionary tale for when we start to be a little pessimistic about like, oh, AI is going to replace all the jobs. How is society going to look like? I think most jobs tend to involve some degree of these kind of niche topics. We rely on people being able to grapple with them logically, and LLMs seem to suffer there.
yeah. So, what are you most worried about with AI?
I'm most worried that AI will be used to easily manipulate large groups of people on social media and other venues.
Yeah, yeah. What interventions are you most optimistic about? Like, how do we keep that from happening in a way that doesn't lead to like pure censorship or lockdown? Yeah. How do you think about that?
It's a challenging question, but I think that if we could build some trustworthy institutions that are trustworthy in of themselves, and also people trust, they give,
Mm,
then
mm,
we could start to handle these really complicated things. Perhaps the easiest example that we need an institution for is handling things like deep fakes, like what is real and what is not. We need
mm.
perhaps some kind of authority. I don't know where it would come from, but that kind of just helps people understand where different videos are coming from and if they're real or not, like the provenance of things, I guess. And then the other aspect is for social media, I think it would be very important to have some kind of perhaps regulation that requires the data to be open to some extent. So where we could observe what's going on in these social media networks and what people are seeing or who's posting what and what reach different kinds of posts get. And then we could start to study at least what these influence campaigns are really doing.
Again, just ties back to the work you're doing. How would your work help us here?
We could start to study like little aspects now of things like of video or of text. What small changes to it would increase or decrease how much it influences people. I guess in a more immediate step forward, like if you rephrase some tweet to be a little angrier, does that get more or less, fewer likes, right? Or a greater engagement?
Do you have a sort of favorite AI related book or movie or something?
Yeah, so I recently read the book Permutation City, and I really liked that. They have to do with some I guess, the very fundamental concept of what does it mean to be conscious, like as a conscious human being or AI. And it was just exploring a lot of these extreme cases of like, what does it mean to be conscious? And it really tried to get to the kind of the hard science of it, if that, to the extent that that exists, or I guess the hard philosophy of these ideas. So I enjoyed that book a lot.
Permutation
City, yeah.
Okay, yeah, I'll check that out. That does sound interesting. Because and this is the fun part about to some degree, whether or not the AI is hyped, it does lend itself to these sorts of discussions.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, machines will never be conscious. Well, how do we know?
Yeah.
Right.
I've witnessed a lot of discussions among computer scientists about like neuroscience and philosophy and things that are not normally not talked about in computer science meetings. Yeah.
I mean, given your interest, so do you have a hobby or a pastime that you think is actually useful or informs your work in AI? Or do you try to keep those things totally separate? Like, nope, I go play pickleball and I don't think about it.
I think this might be a funny kind of silly example, but I like cooking and I like coming up with recipes that are weird and seeing if they work out or not. So sometimes it really works out. And I feel like I've come up with new things that are awesome. Like if I had a restaurant, I'd want to have them on the menu and they'd be really funky and unique.
Okay, I got to ask, man. Edge cases. Give me an example of like your best experiment and like the worst.
Well, okay, so a good example recently is in Greek cuisine, there's the spanakopita, which is a spinach pie. And you make it by grinding a bunch of spinach and combining with feta cheese and putting it into a little pastry thing. And recently substituted arugula for spinach. And if you do that, it still tastes really good. And there's probably like some versions of that in Greece out there. But I've kind of refined this like arugula version of the spanakopita. And then though I realized that what if we were to make it into a pasta? Like could we still take these ideas and turn it into like some kind of pasta sauce instead? And there's some steps you have to take to make sure that it like all meshes together with noodles, but you could do that and it tastes really good. So it's this idea now, like sometimes it's fun to take risks, especially in a low risk environment like cooking for the most part.
I'm tracking. Yeah, I'm tracking. And if it goes bad, well, you just start over.
Exactly. Yeah. So if you want an example of something really bad, there's numerous of those examples. But I usually, you could cook with vodka and like it accentuates some of the herbal tastes sometimes. But if you put too much of it, it gets way too bitter. And like trying to add like maybe like whiskey to things, I've done a lot of that and it just doesn't work. Yeah. So there's a lot of those examples.
That's reasonable. It'd be great to hear that, like, whiskey makes everything better. Yeah. Too bad. That's pretty interesting. Secret Cyborg question: what have you found to be the most useful sort of AI tools for your own work? And this is related to a question I wanted to ask, which is, how do you keep up with the literature?
So for the first one, I don't really use AI tools because I don't know. I'm trying to do things the old school way, probably because I know that soon enough we're going to be relying on it so much. So as much as I can, I'm trying to just like keep an authentic voice. Don't use ChatGPT for anything.
You want to enjoy the days of authenticity.
Yeah. I feel like I don't know. because that's probably going to disappear as soon as we just do it by default and stop realizing how it used to be. I still try to use a pen and paper for drafting things sometimes, however much I can, as is convenient. But so sorry, what was the other question?
How do you keep up with the literature?
So it's something from early on in the PhD, I was kind of scared about, and I had FOMO, fear of missing out, with all these papers coming out, and that's probably a tale that everyone talks about in computer science. But one thing that's helped me is finding a niche that is small enough where I could keep up with the community. So it's been really helpful to dive into, okay, the group of people that does observational causal inference using machine learning and that publishes in certain venues. You could handle the papers that come out among these people. And for me, I got lucky in that I found a niche that I think I could stay in for the most part. And that's been really helpful.
For now, because people will discover, as you have, like there's a tremendous possibility. So enjoy it while you got it.
Then I'll have to find a smaller subset and stay in that one instead.
Yeah, I only work with causal inference with a capital C. Okay, sure. Yeah, it's gonna be interesting. I'm on the hunt for like new approaches, new tools, which leads me now to the the inescapable moment of our podcast where I'm also on the hunt for, I've actually even moderated this. I'm on the hunt for an AI joke. I've stopped asking for good AI jokes.
Okay, so, nice. Hopefully I could satisfy you now.
There you go. Do you have an AI joke that you could share with us?
All right. So here it goes. A deep learning scientist, artificial intelligence scientist, and a machine learning scientist walk into a bar. And when they enter, the bartender says, "Oh, so table for one?" Because it's all the same thing.
Yeah. The Venn diagram. Like, how dare you, sir? It's like, really? That's funny. All right, that's actually pretty good.
Okay, cool. I stole that from someone else, but yeah. Anyway.
Hey, that's great. Great artist skill.
Yeah.
No, that's great because it also potentially offends all three of those communities.
I know. Yeah,
it's all right. If they're going to deal with AI as a social system or a social science, they're going to have to learn to build a sense of humor, which AI today still struggles with. It's really interesting. Yeah, something profound in there. What do you think will be the sort of last human task that AI will master?
Wow, interesting. It probably has to do with embodiment to some extent, like actually living in the world and synthesizing all the different kinds of information that exists and coping with like actually living in the world.
Yeah. I think it is an interesting question though, because you started with this idea that people are worried their jobs will be replaced by AI. I mean, if you work, as an executive assistant, AI can schedule meetings just as well as you can. But what AI can't do, right, is understand like when your colleagues are having a bad day, writing a note or knowing how to handle like, hey, I have to back the calendar off a little bit because today this person's struggling. It's those things, right, that are actually really important, and we miss them certainly in the hybrid environment. So we're still
right.
Along those lines. I have to be aware of the fact that we are coming up on the end of this, but I really have deeply enjoyed the conversation.
Me too.
Really checked a box here, which is to get to know you a little bit better, honestly. And these are the conversations we'd have if we were in the hallways, but we can't do that right now. So appreciate you being willing to come online to talk about it.
It was really fun. Thank you. Yeah, I really appreciate it too. It's great.
And I'm pulling in on this theme of transformation. Part of ISI's mission statement is to try to create an intellectually vibrant environment for the development of future leaders, frankly, thought leaders, world leaders. And what you're doing, I think, is going to be key for that kind of leadership. So I look forward in the time we have left to help you as a colleague with that transformation. We're going to continue to transform into high impact individual. So thanks, Merle.
I look forward to that. Thank you.
All right. Well, if you enjoy these short podcasts, please do what really only you can do. Rate us, score us, evaluate us, grade us, and subscribe. Spread the word. Send us feedback. Give us ideas on how you keep up with literature, as Merle asked. Offer up brave questions. And of course, just keep listening and hopefully learning. And join us, please, again for another episode of AI Insiders, where we'll keep exploring, keep learning, and keep humanizing AI to help navigate our way through this weird world, trying to do what humans can do best when they face these kinds of challenges, working together as if all our lives depend on each other. Because they do. So for now, and for the future, fight on.